It's Wednesday during Holy Week, and today we're going to look at the betrayal of Jesus Christ. I'm going to read this section of scripture, Matthew 26. The parallel account's found in Luke chapter 22. It says this: Then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he sought an opportunity to betray him. Here's verse 17. Now on the first day of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I'll keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he reclined at the table of the 12, and as they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me." And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him, one after the other, "Is it I, Lord?" He answered, "He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born." Verse 25, Judas, who would betray him, answered, "Is it I, Rabbi?" He said to him, "You have said so." Well, we'll find this, that if it happened to Jesus, it can also happen to you. I work with a lot of very well-known athletes through my work with the Rockets, and I found this, that I think we often think that if I can get to a certain level of income, if I've got enough money, if I've got enough fame and fortune, that I will be free from the pains, the betrayals, the problems that other people face. But what I found is this, that just because you make a lot of money, just because you have a notoriety, that does not protect you from betrayal and pain. Matter of fact, several years ago, a very well-known NBA All-Star was betrayed by his financial advisor. They estimated that his financial advisor took over $25 million from him. After all the criminal case and the civil case, his financial advisor is ordered to pay back only $7.5 million. So here's a man that obviously this NBA player trusted part of his wealth and his fortune to, that betrayed him. And so today we're going to look at, from this passage right here, about how God can use betrayal and our response to it. In verse 24 of Matthew 26, Jesus says, "The Son of Man goes as is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed." So this is what Jesus says, is that he knows on this Wednesday, as Judas is looking for an opportunity to betray Jesus, that God can use betrayal for his ultimate purpose. Now here's the question: why did Judas betray Jesus, and why do people betray us? And very often it's because, like Judas, they have their own selfish self-interests at heart. Throughout the New Testament and the Gospels, we find that Judas is always referenced to at the very end. He's never mentioned towards the top, and it indicates that in terms of intimacy with his disciples, he was at the very end. And also, Jesus, when Judas refers to Jesus, he never calls him Lord. He always calls him Rabbi or Rabboni, which means teacher. So he didn't have that lordship relationship. And so most likely what Judas was doing is he was hanging on as part of the 12 to see what he could get out of Jesus. One day when Jesus overthrew the Roman government and really became the king, he was looking for perhaps the fame and the fortune and the notoriety that he would get when Jesus came into his kingdom. So he was only looking to use Jesus, and what he found with the chief priest was now an opportunity to betray Jesus. Also in the parallel passage, Luke 22 verse 3, it says that Satan filled his heart as well. So there's a spiritual warfare dynamic going on as well. So here's our response. We find in Psalm 55 that King David is writing about being betrayed by most likely Ahithophel. And Ahithophel was his right-hand man, his trusted man that he would go to for advice. And yet when his son Absalom was trying to overthrow him, Ahithophel rebelled and went to the other camp. And so David writes of this betrayal in very emotional terms. He says it's almost a physical thing. It's an emotional thing. He said, "I wish I could fly away and escape." And he says what hurts the most is because this is somebody I journeyed with, I was in community group with, I worshiped with, I was with all the time. But the very end of Psalm 55, he says, "But I will trust in you." I will trust in the Lord. And so even when we're experiencing the pain of betrayal, we know that God can use betrayal for God's ultimate purposes for our life. And so we trust God. Paul says it this way, that he demonstrates his trust by 2 Timothy 4:16. He says, "Even though at my last standing, my last courtroom appearance, no one stood with me," he says, "may it not be held against them." And so what Paul decided to do in this betrayal was to forgive. And so here's the application point, is that in your betrayals, whether they're close family members that betrayed you, church members that betrayed you, coworkers that have betrayed you, they've stabbed you in the back, they've told secrets that you asked them not to share. Whatever it is that they've done to betray you, you can demonstrate your trust in God this week, during Holy Week, just like Jesus did, to say, God, you have a plan, and I trust you, and the way I'm going to demonstrate is by forgiving that person, by no longer holding that offense against them. Because here's a God that he never forgets. He's omniscient. He knows everything, and yet he tells us that when it comes to forgiveness, he separates us as far as east is from the west, from our sin, and that's the same thing we do. We separate that person from their sin. We no longer hold it against them. So the prayer for this week, for you on this Wednesday is, Lord, who has betrayed me? And how do I need to let go of that? How do I release that? Who do I need to forgive that's betrayed me? God bless you.